This conference will now be recorded.
Just so you know. All right. So today we're lucky enough to have Jack Schott here with us after graduating from University of Pittsburgh with a degree in industrial engineering. Jack packed up his bags and hit the road with Laura Kriegel. What they thought would be a month-long road trip turned into 3 years of living on the road, researching summer camps and learning spaces. They made incredible friends, learned more than they could imagine, and found a talent for speaking and sharing ideas. After years on the road, Jack and Laura founded and now run Stomping Ground, help other organizations tell their story online, and continue to work with other camps to bring more kids to better camps. Some of Jack's projects include the Summer Camp Society, Jack and Laura Camping Coast to Coast, and the Alliance for Self-Directed Education. I hope you guys will join me in welcoming Jack to share some ideas with us today. So, Jack, you're up, man.
What's up, y'all? I am going to fly today. We've got 50 ideas we're going to try and get through in 50 minutes. No, I'm sorry, 50 ideas we're going to try and get through in 60 minutes. That's a lot of stuff. I also posted all of these slides at thesummercampsociety.com/COCA. Aston will probably put that in the chat, or maybe he already did. And he'll send you an email with all that information too. But it has these slides and then a bunch of other random stuff that might be useful. To be honest, I made a mistake and tried to send that to Aston last week, and it got stuck in my outbox, so he didn't get it. So it's my fault that you didn't get that ahead of time. Aston, let me know if my audio gets a little goofy. I'm seeing some people in the chat saying that they can't hear, and I don't know if that's me or them. So I'm going to fly. If you want me to slow down, just type a question in the chat and I'll keep track of that. And also, you can always just send me an email at jack@thesummercampsociety.com if you have questions about specific activities. Like Aston said, I basically do two things. I run the Summer Camp Society with Sarah Kurtz McKinnon, which is an online professional development thing that we do for camp folks. You can check it out. And then I also run Stomping Ground, which is an overnight summer camp in upstate New York that we founded in 2015. So this will be our 5th summer, which is wild. We should do a celebration. And we run for 6 weeks, and we rent a Girl Scout camp. So like many of you, I know the excitement and pain of not owning your facility and getting to work with folks that have similar and different kind of missions and partnerships with what you have going on. So we kind of pack everything up, show up, put on our show for 6 weeks, pack it all up, and head on out, like I know a lot of y'all do. And I had a chance to meet some of you in Fargo this last November. Was it November? I can't remember when we were in Fargo, but it was cold. But it was also really fun and exciting to meet all of you. I read through all of your questions and thoughts and want to be very honest. You are all going to be much better at kind of creating adaptive programming. And I wonder if maybe what I'll do is I'll put a Google Doc into that chat, into that website that I said, thesummercampsociety.com/COCA, so that if people have ideas about how to take some of these activities or thoughts and make them more adaptive for different populations, you can kind of share those ideas there. Because is there a trade? Because I will try, but that's not like really where I'm going to be the best or the most useful. Some of the other questions, I think I can be a little more useful, especially around, I built a whole new section of the presentation around indoor activities that we do, because that was a number of the people were asking for. So I'm going to get started, and we're going to start with, we're going to do basically 3 categories of activities. The first one is outrageous stuff that's weird, wild, outside the box. All of the activities that we're going to talk about, or most of the activities, are very cheap or free to do, just using the supplies we already have at camp. A couple of them you can spend some money on, but if you want to not spend any money from this that's the easiest thing ever. That's what we're hoping for, because we run on a pretty tight budget. The other thing is, don't in any way feel like I'm telling you like this is how you have to run camp or you need to do these things. I'm going to try and give you as much stuff as possible. Take what you want, leave the rest. No stress. And I'd love to hear more about the cool stuff y'all are doing, because I'm sure you're doing really interesting and fun activities that we can all start to share together as well. So this first 15 or so are outrageous activities. These are things that we run in a choice-based schedule for 1 hour that kids can sign up for, and they get silly and weird and up to stuff, but they could also be run pretty easily as like cabin activities, or groups would go and not have signed up for them. The first one is EMT school. Really simple. That's Enoch sitting in the front seat of the ambulance. The ambulance actually doesn't move. That's one of the fun parts about EMT school, is the kids get in the ambulance, which is an old van that we have at camp. We usually use to move luggage. They get in, they get a call on their radio from somebody, then they go to that place and pretend to be EMTs and put on fake casts and things like that. Hijinks ensue. Then they run back to their van and wait for the next ambulance call. Next one, Tea with the Queen. We had some folks from the UK that came and worked with us last year, and they had tea with the Queen. So what would happen is the kids would get together, they paddled their canoes across the pond and had a tea party. Really simple, essentially just a tea party with some funny accents. Really fun things that kids can take home and remember for the rest of their lives, hopefully. Paint Nina on a tree. We ran an activity where kids got to bet on stuff they wanted to have happen, and one of the kids added this as what they were hoping for, and then the next day we let kids kind of tape Nina to a tree. We asked her first, so she was down with it, and then we just kind of threw paint on her and got super silly. Quick hack about paint. If you take tempera paint and put shampoo in it, it becomes super easy to wash off your skin and easy to kind of move on from there. And plein air painting, what we do is we just take those weird little easel things, we take them and put them outside, and then we paint stuff outside. It's the same as regular painting, but it's outside, and it creates this memory, this shared experience that kids can go home and talk about. Fairy houses, probably a lot of you do fairy houses. We make a little section of camp where we take kids and do fairy houses. In this picture, we've got one of our older campers who really loved going with the younger kids to go make fairy houses. And what we love about that is giving the older kids a chance to mentor younger kids. Pretty simple and easy activity. I can answer questions about fairy houses later too. This one's one of my favorite. We don't run like super strict swim lessons at Stomping Ground. It's all optional. And some kids really wanted to run an activity called Kids Teach Swimming. So kids could sign up to be taught how to swim by other kids, which was really fascinating and so cute. And then those kids all sat together for the rest of the week at lunch, because that was their favorite thing that they did that week. Build your own armor. We do a lot of stuff with cardboard. Cardboard is so cheap and easy to get. We always just go to the kitchen and take the leftover Cisco boxes and use those to make things. Build your own armor is duct tape and cardboard, and kids make suits of armor and helmets and things like that. Really simple, really fun. Puddle party. We had a puddle. We had a party. You can guess. Battleship is a game we took from YMCA Camp Coleman, and the way it works is you take a basketball or a volleyball court, and on the volleyball court you hang those tarps over the front of the court, and then you let the kids in groups of 3 or 4 make boats out of either rope or flour, or we've used chalk on a basketball court before, but essentially they just make their little boats, and then one side gets sponges and they throw the sponges over the net, and if a sponge lands in your boat is damaged. If your boat gets damaged twice, then it sinks, and you have to run and get into another group's boat, and then that side gets to throw their sponges back over the top, and the goal is to be the last team with boats in existence, just like kind of normal battleship. But it's really fun. Paint party. We get kids together and just throw paint together on top of tarps, and silly stuff like this happens. I'm showing some of these like simple ideas like paint party or tea with the queen, because the goal is not always that these are like the most innovative wild ideas, but how to unlock for yourself what can be fun without getting too outside the box, without spending too much time. It's pretty easy as a staff member or volunteer to know, oh, we're running paint party, we're just throwing paint on each other. Kids opt into it, they know they're going to get dirty, and fun happens. LARP, I don't know if you do LARP, but it's one of our most popular activities. And the idea of LARP is live action role play. You can kind of Google what it looks like. For us, what we do is we get groups of 5 or 15 kids. A few of them choose to be NPCs or non-player characters. Those folks are like typically end up being like the bad guys. And then each kid kind of makes up a pretty simple character. So they might be a knight or a wizard, and then they go on a quest and interact with these non-player characters. We lead it with 2 staff typically. 1 staff lead the good guys, 1 staff lead the NPCs, and they go around and interact with each other in that way. My guess is you have some staff who are people who do these kind of LARP things in the rest of their lives and would be really excited to lead this kind of thing at camp because it's pretty simple and low barrier to entry. We use those foam swords that are right there. They cost about $20 a sword, but the same thing could be done with pool noodles cut in half. We use those too when we need more swords than we have. Our mascot at camp is the newt. So we have the newts paper, and every week we kind of go around and kids collect stories and take pictures and then pass out on Friday the newspaper that we just print in our normal staff, kind of like normal printer situation. So it's nothing too fancy, but it's really fun and easy and lets us celebrate some special aspects of camp. And then we give it to the parents as they leave camp. So it gives us a chance to celebrate some specific things and give parents a chance to ask specific questions of their kids. One of the things we find is that kids do a pretty mediocre bad job of kind of explaining what really happens at camp, and giving them a little glimpse into what's happening in a fun way, written by kids mostly, can let the parents know what kind of questions to ask their kids as they're driving home. Because most parents say like, hey, how was camp? And they're like, it was good. And then parents don't know the next questions. They don't know how to ask, what was the night game like? How was the dance party that I saw happened on Thursday? Those kind of things. So we try and give some parents some easy questions that they can start to ask. We do big shaving cream. We call them wars, but they're really just parties. We play music and buy 50 cans of shaving cream and put an area of the ground where kids can, opt into getting covered in shaving cream, and they go out and get covered in shaving cream and throw shaving cream at each other. We let everybody know the safety stuff around not putting it in people's faces. We have hose stations that kids can go get washed off if they get things in their eyes, those kind of things. But shaving cream, biodegradable, and easy to, like, it kind of goes away. You don't have to like do a bunch of cleanup if you can let it sit for a day. Nature spa. This one, some of our staff led, and they basically just put kind of sand on their face, cucumbers, sat, listened to quiet music, and did a spa. Again, one of the things where when you empower your staff and say, hey, Molly, you're leading nature spa, and give her 15 minutes to come up with an idea, usually she can make something really fun happen if you pick the right staff members. Beyonce Boot Camp, they made a Beyonce music video. So fun, so silly, and kind of a fun way to change the tone of just a regular music video, to give it a little bit of a theme and let kids sign up for it. One of the things that we've noticed about running these kind of activities is if you have the beginning of an idea, and staff know kind of what they're going, or volunteers kind of know what the start is, and then they can go put on costumes, then the kids' buy-in level shoots through the roof, because once you start putting on costumes, the excitement just builds and the kids' kind of buy-in is higher. Channel 11 news team is similar to the newspaper. They went around and made videos of different aspects of what was going on at camp. The staff just did it on their iPhone, so they brought their phones and they went around and interviewed kids and told stories about what was going on that then they edited into like a quick kind of news thing that we sent home to parents and posted on social media. I love trying to figure out ways to do activities that double as content creation for sharing what's going on at camp with the families back home. Jerry and the Lost Burrito is from The Office or maybe Parks and Rec. I don't know. But the reason why we put this up here is that what we have found is sometimes the name and what really happens in the activity is dramatically less important than the excitement and the personal connections that the kids can have with the staff. I'm sure many of you have seen that some of your staff, some of your volunteers can make anything seem fun, and some of them struggle to make almost anything fun. And in this example, Daquan was leading this activity, and he came to our program director and said, I want to run this activity where there's going to be a burrito that gets lost. The kids are going to go on this hunt and go find it, and then we're going to find it and we're going to roll around in a river, because it's like from some Parks and Rec or The Office. And we were like, why would you want to do that? But Daquan is the kind of staff that can make anything fun. And so he went out and made this incredibly fun, and we trusted that Daquan can do it. And the point of this slide is really to say that sometimes it's okay to take a risk on staff who have that track record, who have proven that they can take normal activities and take them to 10 out of 10s. They can take wild activities and make them the kind of memory that these kids are going to have for so long, because it's so absurd. It will just never happen in any other place, because who would just go on a hunt for a burrito? So that's that one. Kind of from a mechanics point of view, I put a video on that same website, the summercampsociety.com/COCA, and it's about Dreamworld, and it describes how sometimes we let kids kind of give us the ideas. So all those ideas, I don't know if the kids came up with or the staff came up with, but the staff executed on them. And the way that works for us is on the first night of camp, we often pass out little pieces of paper for all the kids to write down their dreams for the week on, kind of like Make-A-Wish inspired idea. And we encourage them to think big. So sometimes they write down things that are going to definitely already happen, like archery or swimming or those kind of things. And then we encourage them to push themselves a little further to think differently. And they might write down that they want to meet Taylor Swift or go to the moon. And they're not going to, we let them know you're not going to probably actually meet Taylor Swift or actually go to the moon, but we'll do our best to make something silly and fun come as a result of this. And from there, we collect all the pieces of paper that they have given us, and we sit down with our LITs or our teen campers, and we come up with a plan for how to put all those ideas onto the schedule. So if you write down meet Taylor Swift, maybe one of the LITs is going to carry a guitar and sing Taylor Swift songs and come out at lunch one day. Or somebody wants to go to Narnia, we'll get Narnia on the schedule for Thursday afternoon, and the teens will come up with an activity that is kind of Narnia focused. But what it lets us do is give the teens some way to give back to camp. And they're supervised, and they have staff that are with them to help them create these experiences. So they're giving back to camp. Camp is getting really cool stuff from the teens. It's not like kind of fake team building. It's real stuff. We really need these activities to work because it's the program that's going to happen. And then it's real team building for the teens who have to work through this conflict of I want to be Taylor Swift or you want to be whoever, and create this real environment for kids. And what we found is it's not always true that the teens make the best activities, but it is true that a lot of kids love going to the teen activities more than any other activity because it's really cool to go and see what the teens are putting together, and it sets the cultural tone for the whole week. And it's a cool way for us of shifting, and this is one of the questions that I saw in the kind of like comments, how can you help with this? It shifts the focus of the teens, being a part of silliness that the counselors are making up to the teens kind of pretending to be counselors and then making up activities for the kids, which makes the teens sillier, even though they're like acting like grown-ups, which then kind of brings them on board this team of silliness, which is kind of a lot of times what we're trying to do at camp is like, how do we get teens to lighten up and be a little sillier? Well, one way we do it is through Dream World like stuff, where the teens become the leaders of the silliness. And what we tend to do, kind of a way we focus on this, is we try and find some of the teens who have a little more social capital or who kind of are like cooler, and spend some extra time with them to get them on our team, because they can shift the whole group. And if I'm going and hanging out with Chad because I know Chad is kind of like the coolest teen, and I get him to buy into the idea of Dream World, a lot of the teens will come with me or come with Chad on that, right? So those are some of the outrageous activities that we've run. I've got like a gazillion more examples and different titles. One of the ways that we sometimes make up these kind of activities too, besides just asking the kids what they'd like, is we just write down on a bunch of pieces of paper different nouns or adjectives or stories, and then we pick 3 or 4 out of a hat and put them together. So you might get Darth Vader Christmas surprise, and then you sit together and make up an activity with a couple of people, and all of a sudden you've got something going. We also use what we call what we have found the 6 thinking hats, which is, you can read all about it online, so I won't dig into it too far as we're going here, but it's by this guy Edward de Bono, who talks about brainstorming and trying to like free groups from being stuck kind of contradicting each other and getting thinking in parallel directions. So basically everyone thinks, let's come up with wild stuff together. Wild, wild, wild. There's no bad ideas. Then pause. What are the problems with those ideas? Okay, cool. Now we have these problems. Pause. What are the really cool parts about those ideas that we like, even though there's problems with them? And we all think about the best parts. Then now that we have kind of this wild idea, the problems, and the stuff we like, we can try and solve the problems using these like wild idea situation again, to get more of what we like, right? So it's called the 6 Thinking Hats, and there's a book and a bunch of YouTube videos by Edward de Bono. He's a Stanford guy. Okay, so here's a bunch of indoor activities that we do that are maybe a little different from normal stuff. We also do all of the kind of normal stuff. And most of these are indoor activities where we try and let kids still be split into smaller groups. There's a lot of indoor activities you can do, like a Dutch auction or campfires or talent shows that are really fun. I'm mostly going to focus on what can you do in smaller groups when it's raining outside, because I think we can brainstorm, or you can send me an email and I have a bunch of ideas too around these like bigger events, but they're harder to dig into in a shorter period of time. So this is my friend Ada, and Ada was leaving camp one year, and she really felt sad that the new kids coming in the next week were not going to know what camp was like and be really nervous. And so she wanted to make camp capsules. And what she did is she made a little box, decorated it, and wrote a bunch of little notes and gave some advice to the new person who was kind of coming in to stay in her bunk the next week. And then she convinced all of her cabin mates to do the same thing. But you could do that and then have it for the next year's campers. But it's basically just campers creating a welcome package for the next group of people that are going to come to camp. Cardboard and duct tape, kind of similar to cardboard armor. We get a bunch of cardboard, a bunch of duct tape, and we make stuff with kids. and it's so fun to see what kids come up with. One year they made this like wild dragon that all the kids kind of went underneath and then flew into the dining hall the next day during a meal. Make your own backpack. This is one of our most popular activities. And basically it's kids sewing backpacks. That's my friend Zoe, who is the leader of it right there. And basically what happens is you take a piece of cloth, anything, sheets, fabric, whatever, you can get them from all kinds of different thrift stores and stuff, and you make this kind of design on it, where you poke a hole here, 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 and here, so 8 holes total, and then that's kind of the center where you fold it together, and then you sew up the outside. So you've got a little bag, and then we braid yarn to make the kind of drawstring backpack part of the backpack. Kids love making things like that. These are all making things to start indoor, and then we'll switch to some new stuff in the indoor. This one's making a pillow. Again, similar idea, sewing up some fabric and then stuffing it full of things that are, soft. Maggie was leading notebook collage. She noticed that a lot of kids were carrying around notebooks and writing. Thank you, Jennifer. We're writing a lot of notes and things like that. And so she found a bunch of old magazines and got kids together to do a notebook collage where they just decorated the front of their notebook. It would be really fun to do that with the cabin and take, $10 to buy 10 composition notebooks and then get a bunch of old magazines and collage the front of it. But what we do for rainy day activities is we have a bucket that has all the supplies to make your own backpack, to do notebook collage, to do a pillow, those kind of things. So we can just pull them out and let kids go make what they want to make. Needle felting. If you don't do felting at camp, it's really simple and fun. And you can just look up needle felting, and there's a whole bunch of different things about it. But basically, you take this felt material and you poke it a bunch of times, and you can turn it into really cool creations. And definitely worth looking into. And another thing you can just have in a box that you pull out for these indoor activities. Wood burning, same idea. That wood burner, I believe, cost $8 on Amazon, and we use it to let kids write their names or do all kinds of things with scrap wood, and we just get our parents to donate random scraps of wood and those kind of things. This one does cost money, but is so fun and easy to do at camp if you have somebody that has a passion around this. And the way this came to our camp was we had a volunteer who loves making things out of stained glass. And he was like, I would love to do that with kids. And he brought the supplies to make that happen. And the reason why I wanted to kind of highlight it here is to think about the artisans or the makers in your community of camper parents or volunteers, and figure out ways to get their passion, the things that they are special at, to camp, whether it's stained glass or whittling or painting murals. What is it? And can we reverse engineer how to make that possible with kids? And are other people doing that? So we Googled stained glass with kids and found a bunch of simple tutorials. And then we went and sat down with the volunteer and started talking with them about what do they do and how can we create small projects, simple projects that could be created with kids in a short period of time. And now we make just little pendants that kids can hang in their room or whatever, and it's just really fun to kind of walk away with something. Science Friday, we were stuck in our dining hall, and this is the foyer of the dining hall, and we just pulled out some old microscopes and started looking at stuff under microscopes. And kids, it was kind of like a carnival situation where kids could kind of wander between different activities, and there's just all these girls huddled around science stuff, trying to look at anything they could find under a microscope. And I think sometimes it's really hard to figure out ways to incorporate STEM and science into into camp. And this is one way that we found is really easy and kind of, if it's there, becomes interesting to go look at, kind of like in a museum, as opposed to kind of like standing there with a stick and saying, you got to look at the science stuff. Kind of just like fun and silly, and let the kids kind of explore stuff, find different things to put under the microscope, and have a good time with. Okay, so these next ones are kind of like simple games and things that we've kind of seen kids fall in love with while at camp and start to teach each other. We have a room at camp that we call the Fungin, and in the Fungin we keep all of these kinds of things, so it's easy for kids to know they can go into the Fungin and play this kind of stuff, or a cabin kind of like rents out the Fungin for a rainy day activity, right? So Settlers of Catan is like one of the most popular board games in the world, and I would have thought it was like pretty complicated for like 7 and 8 year olds to play. Turns out they love it. And a lot of mixed age play happens around these kind of board games. But we just have stacks of board games that kids can play. Sometimes I forget that things like board games are so fun for a reason, and kids love them, and they love to do them at camp. Dungeons and Dragons, similar to LARP. I would bet, again, you have somebody on your staff or your volunteers that probably has loved Dungeons and Dragons in the past. What we do is simplify it down. So instead of, one of the big barriers to Dungeons and Dragons, I guess, I don't play Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know all the details, but one of the big barriers is creating a character. It takes like a whole bunch of time to figure out what your character is going to be and the backstory and blah, 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 blah. So instead, we simplify that down. You can pick from 3 or 4 or 5 different types, a knight, a wizard, a druid, whatever. Everybody has like tiny little different powers. And then we either use cards or dice, and somebody basically just tells a story. So the party is walking through the woods and they're attacked by a dragon. Sarah, what do you do? And she says, I try and cast a lightning spell at it. And then you flip a card over. If it's a high card, then a good thing happens. If it's a low card, then a bad thing happens, and in between. And the storyteller or the dungeon master makes up what happens next. So it's a high card. The lightning strikes the dragon in the eye, and the dragon begins to fly away. And then you continue on with the story and building that. So it's kind of like a choose your own adventure type of experience that we found kids really love to participate in. Magic the Gathering, another worldwide phenomenon. We bought all of those cards and a ton more off of Craigslist for $50. It turns out that people buy Magic cards mostly looking for like the rare cards so they can make like more sweet decks and things like that. But we don't need that at camp. We just need to be able to play the game. And so there's these people who sell on Craigslist or donate, if you know the right people, just all these cards that aren't rare but are totally usable for very little money, because they just have them in their garage and they don't know what to do with them, because they're just buying these packs looking for the off chance of getting a really nice card. Kind of like, I did this with baseball cards as a kid, so similar idea, but the not rare baseball cards weren't useful for anything. The not rare Magic cards are really useful for playing Magic if you're not worried about like having the most perfect deck. And if you're, I'm sure there's people that are listening like, dude, there's a lot more that goes on with Magic. Yes, I get it. And the kids teach each other and have a great time. Legos, again, simple one, easy to do. Those are my Legos and one of our counselor Grace's Legos from when we were kids, and we just brought them to camp, and kids like get to get up to stuff playing Legos. Another great activity for when it's raining and you're like, I don't know what to do. Big thing of Legos comes out, and so much fun can be had creating things, playing with them, pretending with them, all kinds of stuff like that. Nail painting, super easy. We bought a pack of nail polish for whatever, $15, and it lasted us for the whole summer, just pulling it out at different times when it was raining or thunderstorms, so the kids could sit down and paint each other's nails, or have that's KJ painting kids' nails. those kind of things. Really easy, really simple. Those ukuleles each cost $15, and teaching kids how to play ukulele is a lot easier than teaching kids how to play guitar. So they get to walk away from camp with a really specific skill. We do a week-long ukulele class, but again, easy to do indoors. Stomping Grounds Got Talent, or insert the name of your camp. Here's Got Talent. This one's a little bit sillier, and basically kids get together and some people are judges. They make up some random talents and they make jokes and tell stories and those kind of things. We found, again, when these things can get like recorded and turned into little videos, kids are both extra amped about it because it's like they're on TV, and two, it turns it into a really fun social media post for later. Kid board meeting. Laura, who's our other camp director, leads kid board meeting about once a week. And she tends to do it during rainstorms. We do a lot of we come in, everybody's stuck in like our big dining hall building, and there's these like little options that kids can go to. And one of them tends to be kid board meeting, where kids can sign up to come and then they choose with Laura how to set the agenda. And the agenda typically involves something like learning what the budget is, talking about the things that they love and wish were different about camp. And then Laura always convinces them that they want to write thank you notes to donors. And then everybody writes little thank you notes to donors. So every week we get 8 to 10 kind of really simple thank you notes from kids that we can use to send to the right donors. And it also gives us a chance to hear kind of in a fun way the feedback from the kids about what they love and wish was different about camp, which lets us kind of get a different type of feedback than we typically get from parents or from staff. So kid board meeting, really fun, really easy. Light dancing. We had some art. We have an artist residency program, and so we had these artists that came to camp, and they were making these awesome videos where they would shine a projector showing a video through these kind of fun little plastic pieces of different shapes that fit together, and then kids would dance in front of that, and we would record the kids dancing and having a good time and being fun, and then they use that to make the artists were doing this to take video of that and they were making an art piece around it. But we used it throughout the rest of the summer because it's really fun to dance when things look like that. And so we would just let kids sign up to go to light dancing. We often kind of in bigger picture things, we do like a casino night. Thanks, Jennifer. We do a casino night a lot. I know a lot of places do casino night. We print fake money and have kind of these like fun stations going around. We found that you can just like take that to a whole nother level and let kids like feel silly. If one of the stations at the casino night is just full of random costumes, we ask our families to donate old costumes. So we send out an email right around the beginning of November after Halloween every year and just say, hey, if you've got old costumes, we'd love them. And we do kind of like a costume drive. You may do this too. We also have a couple of parents who just go around town after Halloween and buy all the discount costumes that they can find and donate those to camp. But basically, I think when people have costumes, it's more fun and sillier and a lot different from what they're doing at home, because playing dress up is really fun. So we do a costume party, casino, hijinks ensue. Our friend Brian was at camp, and this is actually not a picture of the staff meeting, but his idea was to have a staff meeting. So we, had this thunderstorm going on. We were stuck in the dining hall. All the kids were there, and he said, "Who wants to have a staff meeting with me?" And the kids that wanted to go have a staff meeting went and sat with Brian, and Brian just opened the agenda around what was going on and made up some silly problems at camp. So like if you've seen Wet Hot American Summer, they have a staff meeting and they're like, there's a goat that was stuck in the ropes course or whatever. And so Brian said something like that. And then he asked if anyone had any solutions or other problems. And then for 45 minutes, the kids went around and talked about absurd fake problems at camp and started solving them. And I couldn't have led that, but I bet a lot of you have volunteers and staff who are the kind of people who are so fun that they can make something like a pretend staff meeting really fun and silly. And so how do we unlock that silliness and give it a little bit of structure to let the fun kind of ensue? And that leads us into our last section, where we're going to talk about some stations that we run during these kind of like carnival things. We typically call them open camps. So if I call stuff open camps going forward, that's what I'm talking about. It's an area of camp that you're allowed to go to, and you can move freely by yourself while all of camp is there, and go to stations that are like carnival stations or whatever. You can do something similar moving around in cabins if you wanted, but these are kind of like individual stations. Staying indoors, we just set up a little easel and make caricatures of kids. That's Brian. He happens to be an illustrator, but you probably have people that could do pretty good illustrations as well. Paint Stand. This was a part of a program called like FBI training or something like that, where the kids were pretending to be criminals to get into the minds of catching the criminal who had stolen dessert from camp. And they went around and did a bunch of stuff. One of them was covering Stan is this van right here that we use for luggage, or you saw from EMT school. And one of it was painting Stan. So River here is painting Stan with tempera paint and soap, and just feeling really cool about being allowed to do something that he normally wouldn't be allowed to do. So that one, or anytime we can do things that seem like it's breaking the rules, but is actually just like totally fine, because we'll rinse it off, and we're like kind of giving that permission to kids, I think tends to be really fun. Drum circle, we had just had drums. We let people come over, and we just made fun music happen. Tiger Matador, this is inside of our Gaga pit, and really simple here. You just chase the tiger around and try and throw a blanket on top of him, and then you win points if you catch the tiger. You get 30 seconds inside the pit, and you just have fun. We do this with 2 tigers so they can switch when they get tired. We call this different things depending on the theme of the open camp, but this one is just hit the box, and you put a blindfold on and you try and hit a cardboard box with a foam sword or with a pool noodle, and you win points, kind of like it's like a piñata that doesn't break. And we find that kids like to try and do silly stuff like that. Throw Daquan in the lake. This was just a station where Daquan stood on the docks, and kids could come up and choose to throw him in the lake if they wanted to. And we, at the end of all of our kind of night games, the bad guy tends to get thrown in the lake. And so kids have this like lure of throwing people in the lake. And so just kind of getting to throw Daquan in the lake over and over again during a station game was really fun and simple. Bouncers. So we add bouncers to different parts of camp. So this is Maurice and Ryan standing outside of a building where the light party is happening, and all they're doing is just pretending to check to see if kids' names are on the list before they go into the party. What we've also done is had bouncers where they don't let anybody in to the like the fake room, but there's a another counselor standing nearby that kind of encourages kids to sneak around the back and go in through the back door to get into like the secret party. But having bouncers makes things silly and fun. Whale wrestling. So this started as alligator wrestling, but we couldn't find alligators this year, so we had whale wrestling. And what we do is we take old mattresses, old camp mattresses, and put them out to make like a wrestling mat arena area, and then we have somebody dress up like Hulk Hogan and kind of be like all jazzed up and excited and being silly. And kids come up and they can get 30 seconds in the ring to wrestle the whales. And they just throw the whales on the ground and kind of give them the people's elbow or whatever's going on in that situation. And it's all about the hype. It's all about the silliness, and kids get 30 seconds in the ring, and then the next kid gets to go. But it leads to these like giant smiling faces. And this guy here had a pretty tough time at camp. He you probably have maybe especially younger boy campers that are similar to this guy, who had trouble sitting still, had trouble listening to, we're going to go from here to there, but excelled in an environment where he was allowed to just kind of let loose. And what we found is that by giving him this outlet, even just for like 30 seconds during this game, it gave us a better understanding of why he was at camp and what he cared about. He just needed to be able to like kind of let his like energy out in a way like this. And so by earning his respect by doing something like this, we were able to have like more reasonable conversations with him and things like that. And I'm not saying it's, having kids go out and just slam inflatables is going to solve every discipline option, but it did give him an outlet and build some trust with us, where he said, camp is fun enough that I do want to spend the time and the energy to try and control some of the like stuff that was going on with him. Angry Birds, anytime we can take pop culture video games and turn them into little stations, we try and do it. We think it's fun and it has an easy buy-in for kids. In this example, we took cardboard boxes and built a tower kind of across the soccer field, and kids launched tennis balls at the cardboard. And we find it to be really silly and fun. Also, side note on tennis balls, we get like 500-ish tennis balls donated to us every year because they're used tennis balls that I guess, again, I'm not a tennis player here, but I guess when you're playing tennis for real, you only want to use the ball a few times before it like kind of gets a different bounce or whatever. And so our local tennis pro shop just boxes up all these tennis balls, and sometimes they send them overseas, sometimes they give them to wherever. But we found that when we call up and say, hey, we're a nonprofit, can we come pick up some tennis balls? They're like, yes, please, and give us as many tennis balls as we want. And then we use tennis balls for all kinds of stuff, right? So if you're playing capture the flag, we play capture the flag where you can grab a regular flag and earn like 30 points if you get the flag back to your side, or there's just random tennis balls all over the different area of capture the flag, and each tennis ball is worth 1 point or something like that. So there's more quick wins for kids, as opposed to like only having like the 3 kids win, like get the flag and kind of like get that sense of scoring or winning if there's more quick wins like that, right? So that's Angry Birds. Wall paint, we have a choice-based model at camp, and so all the kids gather at the same spot basically every hour before going out to their next set of activities. And anytime groups are in different areas coming back, we find that they arrive not at the same time. Even if we are like trying to be perfectly on time, my group gets back a little bit early, Aston's group gets back a little bit late, and everybody has to wait until people are back. And so we try to do some things where in that kind of coming back together time, we don't have to rely on the counselors always to be leading back pocket games or someone to be really funny. What can we do to make that easier and have that be like more fun time, kind of a value added time? And this is one of the solutions we've come up with a couple times, where we just put up some butcher paper, also gets donated, and we bring out paint, and kids paint this like big piece of butcher paper. Really easy, really simple, kind of fun. Kind of along the same lines, blindfold graffiti, we put up butcher paper and somebody tells you what you're supposed to draw, and you try and draw it with marker or paint on this kind kind of like wall. We've also done it where you think of something like Pictionary and you try and draw it on the wall. And we've also played kind of something similar where we put markers. Oh gosh, we put markers on the end of a broomstick, and then you have to try and draw it with a broomstick, blindfolded or not. Horse racing is a really simple game where you get hyped up like you're at a horse race, and there's 4 different horses. You get to, the kids line up as one of the 4 horses, and they're the 4 suits of a deck of cards: spades, clubs, hearts, diamonds. And then the announcer is, like an auctioneer, we got a diamond here, we got a spade, here we go. And they go through kind of like that. And if your suit gets flipped over, you get to take kind of a step forward, or we mark it out with cones. You move forward 1 space. And if your horse gets to the end first, you win. And we do it during like casinos and things, so you can bet on different horses and win things. I thought we do on casinos. When we do casinos, we play lots of casino style games or whatever, and we just, instead of rigging it so the house always wins, we just rig it slightly the other way so that it's like just a little more likely that the kids will win than whatever the game is. So sometimes kids still lose, like in this game, not everybody wins, but the payout is much bigger. So if you win in horse racing, you get 10 times whatever you bet. And if you are getting 10 times on something that's only has 4 possible options, it's like way more likely, which infuses a bunch of cash into the game. So kids have more cash, because having cash is more fun than not having cash. And it doesn't matter because it's fake money. So we just are happy to have kids have as much of it as they want. The Old Man Jenkins is kind of similar to the paint wall. This is Nina here, and she dressed up like Old Man Jenkins, who was just a grumpy old man who sat down in the middle of our like kind of breakout space where everybody comes back and goes to their next activities, and just was silly and pretended that everyone was on her lawn, and that she wanted them to get off of the lawn and kind of leave her alone so that she could kind of get up to her normal day. And she was talking about where's her coffee, and kids kind of just like interacted with her and played with her as they thought was fun for 6 minutes, and then she went off and did the next thing. I want to take the last like 4 minutes and think a little bit about kind of safety in these spaces. Because we're doing a lot of things and we're asking staff to do things that aren't kind of the specific details of like going to archery, or kind of there's specific rules for whatever, we got to think about how do we help people be more holistic in thinking about safety. And the first thing we say is like, first of all, think about what could go wrong when you're in this space. So if you're being Old Man Jenkins, what could go wrong? There's not a lot that you're going to lead to that could go wrong, because you're sitting in a chair and just being a little bit like silly. So from a physical risk standpoint, there aren't too many things that could go wrong, but maybe you could delay what's starting next or whatever. So think about, how do you sit down and ask questions? What could go wrong? You sit down and think about it a little bit before it starts, and then think like 360 is like all the way around. What could go wrong in any direction from where you are? And then what's within this risk management idea, we set up our staff for like, what is an okay injury? And for us, and it's different at every camp, it's different in every environment, we tell our families before they come to camp that their kids might get scrapes, they might get splinters, they might get those kinds of things. We're definitely going to run around. So like an okay injury is like more like, in sports, we might call it like being hurt, not injured, right? Like getting a cut and needing a Band-Aid. For us, we're okay with that. But I imagine working with a different population, you would have different okay injuries, right? So like I do some work with the hemophilia camps or blood disorder camps, and they have different okay injuries. But without like a line on what we're saying out loud to our staff is an okay injury, then they're paralyzed in being able to come up with a new idea. Because if there's no okay injuries, no okay level of risk, right, all you can do is like sit around and do nothing. And then within that, how do we look at what areas of camp are you able to do like the most freedom in? And we just talk about it with red, yellow, and green areas of camp. Red areas of camp for us are things that have to do with swimming, anything that's like high up, archery. We don't have guns, but if we did, climbing walls, high ropes courses, we don't have any of those things, but if we did, they'd be red areas of camp. Can you do creative things in the water at Stomping Ground? Yes, but there's no flexibility around the rules at Waterfront that are like standardized rules. There has to be lifeguard, you have to be able to do buddy ups, all that kind of stuff. There's like very strict rules on that. So those are red areas of camp. Yellow areas of camp are things that you got to slow down and think a lot more about, but there's more flexibility. So anytime we're building things is like kind of a yellow area. Anytime we're breaking things, anytime we're running off trail a little bit, things that it might be slippery, fire, any of those kind of things are yellow. That we need to spend a little more time thinking through the plan, and we can't just like react fast. And this sounds like super common sense to y'all, and we've found that our staff haven't thought through this stuff, and by introducing some of these like simple categories, they've become better at diagnosing risk before it happens, as opposed to just being like, I don't know, I didn't think of it, or I'm afraid to do anything. And we've had staff kind of in both ways. And then in green are things where it's probably going to be okay. It doesn't mean you get to stop and not think at all about risk, but it does mean that you can move a little more quickly and try some stuff without having to like totally sit down and write out a super plan. And those are things like board games or running around on the main field, playing improv games, and those kind of like classic games. It's easy to make up new ideas within that because we're not engaging already in things that are like overtly risky to start. And that's like we spend much more time helping our staff work through the safety stuff. But I wanted to end with that to kind of say like, it is important as we start to think about, we got it from Amazon, Sammy. We want to think about how to set people up for success as we change what the kind of sandbox that they're allowed to play in is for our staff. And that has been 50 activities in 58 minutes. And y'all are amazing. I'm happy to stick around too. I can answer. I can stick around for 20 minutes or so if we have questions or thoughts or those kind of things. So no stress. We don't have to like run out the door.
Wow. Thank you, Jack. That was awesome. For me, I had some takeaways, so I hope other people did too. Like Jennifer, I love the board meeting and staff meeting ideas. Those are creative ways that a lot of our staff might be able to facilitate. So, and a little housekeeping stuff. Participants, you'll get a follow-up email with the link to Jack's ideas in the Summer Camp Society and the page that he came up with for us. So expect that. Also expect a follow-up with some feedback. So you'll get a link to a questionnaire that you can provide feedback with this webinar and give us feedback about future webinars that you'd be interested in listening to and participating in. A little bit more, we'll just wanted to apologize about sound issues in the beginning. So we're still trying to figure this stuff out. We do 4 of these a year, and this is number 5. So hopefully we'll get the wrinkles worked out as we go along the way. But thank you again, Jack. Like he said, he'll hang around for a little bit if anybody has any questions. But I'm going to turn off the recording now. And if you had anyone miss this, we'll also be sending out a link to the recording as well. So thanks again.